Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Tonight's video is going to be about Charles Starkweather. Now, I searched and searched and searched and could not find a true crime video on Charles Starkweather. I found like documentaries about him, but no one has done a video about Charles Starkweather. So this will be the first, I guess. Fun fact, my aunt grew up and is best friends with this guy's great nephew. I think that's how he's related to him. Now, I've heard this story like growing up, and I came across it again the other day when I was researching about serial killers, and I just thought this story was pretty interesting. I was going to do a Rodney Alcala video, but that story has been done so many times that there's no point in trying to do it again. So here is a video about Charles Starkweather. Let me give you a little sorry, I just lost my train of thought. A little peek of the story, the beginning at least. So Charles Raymond Charlie Starkweather was born November 24th, 1938. He was an American spree killer who murdered 11 people in Nebraska and Wyoming between December 1957 and January 1958 when he was only 19 years old. He killed 10 of his victims between January 21st and January 29th, 1958, the date of his arrest. During his spree in 1958, Starkweather was accompanied by his 14-year-old girlfriend, Carol Ann Fugate. So, let's get into his early life. So, Charles Starkweather was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, the third of 7 children of Guy and Helen Starkweather. The Starkweathers were a working-class family. His father, Guy, was a mild-mannered carpenter who was often unemployed due to suffering from rheumatoid arthritis in his hands. During Guy's periods of unemployment, Helen supplemented the family's income working as a waitress. Starkweather attended Saratoga Elementary School, Irving Junior High School, and Lincoln High School. In contrast to his family's life, Starkweather later recalled nothing positive of his time at school. He was born with Guinevarum, a mild birth defect that caused his legs to be misshapen. He also suffered from a speech impediment, which led to constant teasing by classmates. Now, I looked up what Guinevarum was, and it's just a severe case of bowed legs. So when babies like first learn how to walk, their bones like straighten out in their legs, but his didn't. They curved, so he was very, very bow-legged. As he grew older and stronger, the only subject which Starkweather excelled at was gym, where he found a physical outlet for his rage against those who bullied him. Starkweather then began to bully those who had once picked on him. Eventually, he felt rage against anyone he disliked. In this period, as a young teenager, Starkweather went from being one of the most well-behaved teenagers in the community to one of the most troubled. His high school friend Bob Von Busch would later recall, "He could be the kindest person you've ever seen. He'd do anything for you if he liked you. He was a hell of a lot of fun to be around, too. Everything was just one big joke to him, but he had this other side. He could be mean as hell, cruel. If he saw some poor guy on the street who was bigger than him and better looking or better dressed, he'd try to take the poor bastard down to his size." So let's get into his relationship with Carol. Now, this relationship kind of makes me uneasy, just because of how young she was and how old he was, I guess. It was only like a couple of years difference, but I don't know. And back in that day, like, people didn't really think about age difference, because I mean, there was like 13, 14-year-old little girls marrying like 25-year-old men. So I guess nowadays it would make me uncomfortable. So in 1956, the 18-year-old Starkweather was introduced to 13-year-old Carol Ann Fugate by her older sister, whom he had previously dated. He had dropped out of Lincoln High School in his senior year and was working as a Western Union newspaper warehouse. He sought employment there because the warehouse was located near Whittier Junior High School in Lincoln, where Fugate was a student. Given his working schedule, Starkweather began to visit Carol and Fugate every day after school. He was considered a poor worker. His employer later recalled, "Sometimes you'd have to tell him something 2 or 3 times. Of all the employees in the warehouse, he was the dumbest man we had." Obviously, he wasn't very smart since he didn't finish high school, and he just wasn't really interested in going to school or doing anything with his life. Starkweather taught Fugate how to drive, and one day she crashed his 1949 Ford into another car. However, Starkweather's father, Guy, was the registered owner of the vehicle. He paid the damages but argued with his son about it and his having let his unlicensed girlfriend drive. Refusing to condone his son's behavior, Guy banished Starkweather from the family home. The young man quit his job at the warehouse and became a garbage collector at minimum wage. He began developing a nihilistic worldview, believing that his current situation was the final detriment of how he would live the rest of his life. He used his time on the garbage route to begin plotting bank robberies. He settled on a personal philosophy by which he lived the remainder of his time. "Dead people are all on the same level," he said. So let's get into the murder spree. So his first murder was on November 30th, 1957. Starkweather became angry at Robert Colvert, a service station attendant in Lincoln, for refusing to sell him a stuffed animal on credit. He returned several times during the night to purchase small items until finally brandishing a shotgun. He forced Colvert to give him $100 from the till. He drove Colvert to a remote area where they struggled over the gun, injuring Colvert before Starkweather killed him with a shot to the head. No, that was his first murder. This is going to be getting into the murder spree. On January 21st, 1958, Starkweather went to Fugate's home to get his girlfriend. Fugate's mother and stepfather, Velda and Marion Bartlett, told him to stay away. He fatally shot them, then strangled and stabbed to death their 2-year-old daughter, Betty Jean. He hid the bodies behind the house. Starkweather later said that Carol was there the entire time, but she said that when she arrived home, Starkweather met her with a gun and said that her family was being held hostage. She said Starkweather told her that if she cooperated with him, her family would be safe. Otherwise, they would be killed. The pair remained in the house until shortly before the police, alerted by Fugate's suspicious grandmother, arrived on January 27th. Starkweather and Fugate drove to the farmhouse of 70-year-old August Meyer, one of the family's friends who lived in Bennett, Nebraska. Starkweather killed him with a shotgun blast to the head. He also killed Meyer's dog. Fleeing the area, the pair drove their car into mud and abandoned the vehicle. When Robert Jensen and Carol King, 2 local teenagers, stopped to give them a ride, Starkweather forced them to drive back to an abandoned storm cellar in Bennett. He shot Jensen in the back of the head. He attempted to rape King, but it was unable to do so. He became angry with her and fatally shot her as well. Starkweather later admitted shooting Jensen, but claimed that Fugate shot King. Fugate said she had stayed in the car the entire time. The two fled Bennett in Jensen's car. Now, there's a movie based on this murder spree I think it's called True Romance. It's with Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette. Brad Pitt's in it. Gary Oldman. I think Christopher Walken's in it too, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but I recommend you watching it if you're watching this video and you want to learn more about the case. It was based off of this case. So, Starkweather and Fugate drove to a wealthy section of Lincoln, where they entered the home of industrialistic C. Lawyer Ward and his wife Clara. That is a name. Starkweather stabbed their maid Lillian Fancy to death, then waited for Lauer and Clara to return home. Starkweather killed the family dog by breaking its neck to keep it from alerting the Wards. Clara arrived first alone and was stabbed to death. Starkweather later admitted to having thrown a knife at Clara, but instead that Fugate had stabbed her numerous times, killing her. When Lower Ward returned home that evening, Starkweather shot and killed him. Starkweather and Fugate filled Ward's black 1956 Packard with stolen jewelry from the house and fled Nebraska. The murders of the Wards and Fency caused an uproar with Lancaster County. Law enforcement agencies in the region sent their officers on a house-to-house search for the perpetrators. Governor Victor Emanuel Anderson contacted the Nebraska National Guard, and the Lincoln Chief of Police called for a block-by-block search of the city. After several sightings of Starkweather and Fugate were reported, the Lincoln Police Department was accused of incompetence for being unable to capture the pair. Now, back then, obviously, they didn't have technology to catch them. They didn't have GPS. They didn't have cell phones to track them. So I don't think that saying that the police department was incompetent was right, in my opinion. Don't come for me. There was no way to track these people. So, and eventually, obviously, they got caught. So, needing a new car because of Ward's Packard being identified, the couple came upon traveling salesman Merle Collison sleeping in his Buick along the highway outside Douglas, Wyoming. After Collison was awakened, he was fatally shot. Starkweather later accused Fugate of performing a coup de grace after his shotgun jammed. Starkweather claimed Fugate was the most trigger-happy person he had ever met. Fugate denied ever having killed anyone. Of course she's going to deny it. She's not going to want to fess up to killing people. No one's going to want to do that, especially if they were getting away with it for as long as they did. The salesman's car had a parking brake, which was something new to Starkweather. While he attempted to drive away, the car stalled because the brake had not been released. He tried to restart the engine, and a passing motorist, geologist Joe Sprinkle, stopped to help. Starkweather threatened him with the rifle, and an altercation ensued. At that moment, Natrona County Sheriff's Deputy William Romer arrived on the scene. Fugate ran to him yelling something to the effect of, "It's Starkweather, he's going to kill me." Starkweather drove off and was involved in a car chase with 3 officers: Natrona County Sheriff's Deputy William Romer, Douglas Police Chief Robert Ainsley, and Converse County Sheriff Earl Heflin, exceeding speeds of 100 miles per hour, 160 km per hour, kilometers, obviously. A bullet fired by Sheriff Earl Heflin shattered the windshield, and flying glass cut Starkweather deep enough to cause bleeding. He stopped and surrendered. Converse County Sheriff Earl Heflin said he thought he was bleeding to death. That's why he stopped. That's the kind of yellow son of a bitch he is. Now let's get into the trial. I'm hoping this video is not a 2-parter. I'm hoping that I can just get this video done in one shot, so we'll see. Trial and execution. So Starkweather chose to be extradited from Wyoming to Nebraska. He and Fugate arrived there in late January 1958. He believed that either state would have executed him. He was not aware, however, that Millward Simpson, Wyoming's governor at the time, opposed the death penalty. Starkweather first said that he had kidnapped Fugate and that she had nothing to do with the murders. However, he changed his story several times. He testified against her at her trial, saying that she was a willing participant. Fugate has always maintained that Starkweather was holding her hostage by threatening to kill her family, claiming she was unaware they were already dead. Judge Harry A. Spencer did not believe Fugate was held hostage by Starkweather, as he determined she had numerous opportunities to escape. When Starkweather was first taken to Nebraska Penitentiary after his trial, he said that he believed that he was supposed to die. He said if he was to be executed, then Fugate should be also. Starkweather was convicted for the murder of Jensen, the only murder for which he was tried. He was sentenced to death and executed by the electric chair at the Nebraska State Penitentiary in Lincoln, Nebraska at 12:04 a.m. on June 25th, 1959. He is buried in Wyoka Cemetery in Lincoln, along with 5 of his victims, including Mr. and Mrs. Carl Ward. Fugate was convicted as an accomplice and received a life sentence on November 21st, 1958. She was paroled in June 1976, after serving 17 and a half years at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women in York, Nebraska, she settled in Lansing, Michigan. She changed her name and worked as a janitor at a Lansing hospital. Fugate married Frederick Clare in 2007. Apart from a radio interview in 1996, she had refused to speak of the murder spree. Carol Ann Clare was living in Stryker, Ohio, when she was seriously injured and her husband killed in a car crash on August 5th, 2013. Let's get into the victims now. So Robert Colvert was the first victim, and he was 21, and he was the gas station attendant. The second victim was Marion Bartlett, 58, Fugate's stepfather. Velda Bartlett was 36, Fugate's mother. Betty Jean Bartlett was 2, Veda and Marion's daughter, Fugate's half-sister. The fifth victim was August Meyer, Fugate's family friend. The sixth victim was Robert Jensen, 17, boyfriend of Carol King, 7 was Carol King, 16, girlfriend to Robert Jensen. 8 was C. Lauer Ward, 47, wealthy industrialist. Number 9 was Clara Ward, 46, C. Lauer Ward's wife. 10 was Lillian Fensel, Clara Ward's maid, and 11 was Merle Colson, 34, traveling salesman. Starkweather also killed 2 family dogs of people that he murdered. Depictions in media. Representation in film and television. Okay, so this is the documentaries and movies that have been made about them and stuff. So the Starkweather Fugate case inspired the films The Sadist, 1963, Badlands, 1973, California, 1993, and that's spelled with a K, Natural Born Killers, 1994, and Starkweather, 2004. A Case Study of Two Savages, a 1962 episode of the TV series Naked City, was also inspired by the Starkweather killings. The 1968 first season of Robert Stack's segment episode, The Bobby Courier Story of The Name of the Game, was also based on the events. The made-for-TV movie Murder in the Heartland, 1993, is a biographical depiction of Starkweather with Tim Roth in the starring role. Stark Raving Mad, 1983, a feature film starring Russell Fast and Marcy Severson, is a fictionalized account of the Starkweather Fugate murder spree. The Peter Jackson film The Frighteners, 1996, features a Starkweather-inspired killer who goes on a similar murder spree and has a female accomplice. The forced episode Dangerous Liaisons aired September 2nd, 2010, of Season 3 from the ID series Deadly Women covers the murders. Teenage Wasteland, the Season 4 premiere episode, aired December 6th, 2016 from the ID series A Crime to Remember, also covers the Starkweather Fugate murder spree. Interesting. Okay, so that was the case of Charles Starkweather. If you guys would want a video on Carol Ann Fugate, I would most definitely do a video on her. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I did not know as much as I thought I did about this case until I started researching it. So, I have a couple more days until I go back home to California, so I'm going to try and get true crime videos out as often as I can before I leave. And when I'm gone, I will not be doing true crime videos. I will be posting vlogs. So, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one.